What's up everybody, it's Victon here with my first League Start build guide to 3.21, the biggest and baddest boss killer in Raid class, the Freezing Pulse Ice Spirit Totems Hierophant. And before we get going to the League Start guide, I'm actually going to give you guys some bullet points here so you can kind of know what you're getting into to see if this is something you might like playing. So number one, and this is crazy to say, but we actually got about a 22% more damage buff for this build from the changes to Arcane Surge and Hierophant. I'm actually super surprised to say that because this build was already one of the highest DPS builds out there. But yeah, I will take the more damage, no complaining here. Give me all the damages. And that's without the crazy potential skill trees that we might be getting on some of our in-game weapons. That's going to give us even more damage. Not that we even need it. This is an incredibly strong boss killing build. We reach 22 million DPS in the League Start version of the build with about 3 to 5 divines in gear spent. And we're going to kill all the in-game bosses up to Uber Pinnacle bosses, and from some of you pro gamers out there, you might even be able to kill some of the Pinnacle bosses with just this gear. At what point we're going to transition into our in-game version of the build. I'm going to have another guide for that out in about a week or so after League Start. Spending some more currency, I'd say maybe 50 to 100 divines, will get you about 400 million DPS, and at that point you're basically going to be instantly killing all Uber Pinnacle bosses, with the ability to spend another 50 to 100 divines if you really want to go crazy, and you're going to reach upwards of 700 million DPS, at which point some of those in-game bosses literally die in under a second. It's like they just vanish. In fact, you can farm a max life Uber Pinnacle Searing Exarch and just instantly kill it right when it spawns. It's that kind of damage. And number 4, lastly, this build is a glass cannon. However, I stress this, you should never die while mapping, period, if you're playing it right. Or if you just kind of practice it and you get to the point where you know what you're doing. Your Freezing Pulse literally freezes the entire screen and mobs can't even attack. How you're going to die is by flame dashing ahead of yourself into packs without the protection of your Freezing Pulse. I do it myself sometimes, and guess what, friends? It is okay to die once in a while, the trade-off of being able to instantly kill Pinnacle bosses. So yeah, if you want to be an Uber tank and not kill bosses instantly, this is not the build for you. But if you want to be an absolute beast mode of a boss killer and destroy all those in-game bosses, then stick around and tune out all the haters out there saying, "Too squishy, bro," in the comment section. Yeah. Anyways, alright, rant over. Let's go and talk about the League Start version of this build. This being a League Start guide, my goal was to create a build for you guys that costs no more than 1 to 2 divines on a 5 link and no more than 5 divines on a 6 link. So that's the budget we're going to be working with to get you that 22 million-ish juicy damage. In this guide, I of course have a full path of building that's going to come with a step-by-step guide on how to level up and a detailed, easy to read note section on how to level the build with your gems and links. I'm going to have a custom leveling loot filter for the build to help you find the exact colors and sockets and what items you're going to pick up throughout the campaign. And lastly, the trade links for every single item you're going to be purchasing in your journey from a League Start build to your final in-game version. It should be everything that you need to go to get started on this build and have a super successful League Start. And with all that being said, before we get going, if this guide or any of my other content helps you out in any way, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really does mean a lot and it goes a long way. And I'm also curious, leave me a comment and tell me what y'all's favorite build of all time is. I'm curious. And if you really enjoy my content and want to support my channel, consider taking a look at my Patreon, where I have a super helpful community Discord, and I actually personally do build reviews for you guys all the time in there at a certain tier level. And one thing that's new this league is we're actually going to open up the Discord to everyone, which is super cool. There's going to be a general chat in there to come in and ask any questions you guys have about any of my builds or just chat in general. And then if you are a subscriber, you get access to some of the extra channels in there with some juicy bits. But yeah, I'm also going to be streaming on Twitch this League Start. So if you're interested in seeing how the build goes, definitely come on over there and ask me any question. There are absolutely no stupid questions. That is literally why I'm streaming. It's just to help you guys out. So without further ado, let's hop straight into the path of building. Alright, and here we are in Path of Building. So what I'm going to do is actually not go crazy in depth. I don't really like doing that with my League Start guides because I really think that you guys just kind of want to see the gameplay. You want to copy and paste the POB into your own POB and just roll with it if it looks like something that you want to play. So what I'm going to do actually instead is more talk about how to use my path of building and some of the tools that I'm giving you guys to make your leveling up experience easier. So I think that's what's going to be the meat and potatoes that's going to be the most useful for you guys. So we'll do that. First thing though that I did want to address is some of the changes that has been made to Arcane Surge and Hierophant based on the patch notes. I'm not going to bore you guys with just reading a ton of patch notes here, but I do want to mention a couple things here, right? So Arcane Surge no longer causes Arcane Surge to grant more spell damage. So at face value, that's actually a nerf to us. However, a couple things that it has done, right? So instead, it causes Arcane Surge to grant 10% increased cast speed up to 20% at gem level 20. And that's if you're like triggering it like we are with Arcane Cloak to trigger that Arcane Surge. Supported skills now grant 10% more spell damage if you have Arcane Surge at gem level 1. That does not work with us because it's supported skills, right? And we're supporting it with Arcane Cloaks. That doesn't do anything for us. So at face value, this looks like a nerf, right? However, Hierophant Arcane Blessing Ascendancy passive no longer grants 50% increased effect of Arcane Surge on you. Instead, it now grants 20% more spell damage, which is crazy because we're going to buff that up with increased arcane effect. So really, really good there. That's overall, it actually comes out to, with how much increased effect we have, about 38% more spell damage. Now you have to minus the spell damage that we're losing from the actual gem itself, which was 20, right? So we're actually getting 18% total more damage. And on top of that, we're also getting 18% increased cast speed. So pretty good. 18% more damage, 18% increased cast speed, and cast speed is king in this build. So overall, it comes out to about 24% more damage. Really, really good. And then there's some small changes to some of the passive nodes on the skill tree. It's nothing crazy, but basically it's giving us more increased effect of Arcane Surge. So it is very, very good, and we are going to get those nodes. So I did want to mention that to you guys, so y'all can understand why we are getting a little buff to the build. Okay, cool. So the path of building itself here, again, I'm not going to go crazy in depth with how the build actually works. I mean, it's a totem build, right? You place your totems on the ground, they shoot out, you run around in circles, and you kill everything. That's basically the build. There's really nothing to it. Outside of the fact that, like I said earlier, it is a quote-unquote glass cannon. We do have very low effective life. However, our defense is our damage, and the fact that we're freezing everything with either freeze pulse or ice spear, depending on what you're doing, that is our defenses. So we're of course capped on resistances here, and we're doing about 22 million DPS in the current gear set, which I'll show you here in a little bit. If you guys want to follow the leveling up trees from level 1 up to level, I think I end here at 92, yeah. You can of course do that. Come down here to the bottom left, and you're going to select whichever tree you want to go, and you're going to go all the way up, and it's of course going to also tell you what ascendancy node that you're going to get as well, all the way up to the final, which is level 92 with your cluster jewels. So that's how you actually use the skill tree itself. Again, there's nothing crazy about the skill tree. I think, let's see, I mean, we're getting totem nodes, we're getting some cast speed and some crit multi nodes. Those are going to be the biggest modifiers to our build, is cast speed and multiplier, because if you guys didn't know, Ice Spear, when Ice Spear hits its second form, so basically it shoots out an Ice Spear, right? And after a certain distance of traveling, it turns into the second form of Ice Spear, which actually has almost 100% increased critical strike chance. So that's why getting multi is so big for this build, because it pretty much goes through critical strike chance, because you really don't need it, and you just need multi. And stacking multi is crazy, because you're pretty much doing 100% critical strike chance. Yeah, so that's the build here. We'll go over the Hierophant here. Conviction of Power, actually, I think we're going up this way first. Yeah, so we're going to get Pursuit of Faith first for the +1 to maximum number of totems. We're going to get Ritual of Awakening. We're going to get Conviction of Power, and we're going to get Arcane Blessing. Again, remember that Arcane Blessing is different. It's actually not going to be what it says here. It's going to be Arcane Surge grants you 20% more spell damage. So pretty good. But that's the way you're going to do this. You might want to get Conviction of Power last. I would say, yeah, I would say get that last. I would say get this one first, get this one second, get this one third, get this one fourth. If you want to be more tanky, I wouldn't really suggest this, but you could technically do Divine Guidance instead of Ritual Awakening, but let's just get all the damages. We're not going to ever die in this build, right? So yeah, that's what we're going to do. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cool. Moving on. So let's talk about our skills. So pretty straightforward in skills here as well. The most important thing here to note is that you only use Ice Spear for bosses. Now you can do that on the map bosses if you're just mapping, but you get to a point where you do more than enough damage where your freezing pulse is going to kill the map bosses like it's absolutely nothing, and you really only use Ice Spear for like actual in-game bosses. Shaper, Uber Elder, Searing Exarch, you know, that type of stuff is when you would actually pop an Ice Spear. Increased critical strike damage, greater multiple projectiles. So multiple projectiles is actually the top added source of damage for Ice Spear. Okay, so GMP is absolutely huge. Multiple totems as well. We're gonna have added cold, and your 6th link is gonna be hypothermia. Now I've put these all at 20 without any quality, so obviously this would 22.4 million would go up probably maybe, I don't know, another million, 2 million tops if we're actually qualitying up all of our jewels or our gems here. Keep in mind that Ice Spear we do have at level 21 because I do think it is very valuable to buy a level 21 Ice Spear as soon as you can when it's in your budget, just because it gives so much extra damage. It gives about 1.5 million damage just from having that from 20 to 21, so pretty good. Okay, moving on to our first weapon. We are rocking 2 wands, which I'll talk about shortly, so that's why we have 2 3 links here. We've got Arcane Cloak, which I would suggest putting on your left click so that as you walk around, it is auto casting this for you. Increased duration and Arcane Surge. So we are going to still get that nice juicy cast speed, which is up to 20% cast speed with the new changed Arcane Surge. So that's still pretty good for us. Cast speed, like I said, is very, very strong for us. And then Arcane Cloak, just in general, is a big buff to your damage, right? So that's your first 3 link. Your second 3 link here is going to be Cold Snap, Bone Chill, Unbound Ailments. You really only ever use this for maybe like a really tough rare or for bosses. And you want to throw it right under the boss, and it's going to take a whole bunch of more damage. So pretty nice little added damage if you need to get a burst of damage. This is our curse setup. Now I'll talk about the curses when we talk about the items because it is important here. But we have Arcanus Brand with Frostbite, Elemental Weakness, and Sniper's Mark. So we are triple cursing in this setup. We'll talk about that here shortly. But that is an absolute ton of damage. Like, let's turn this off. Bloop, bloop, bloop. It goes down to 8.6 million. Like, that's how important it is for us to get this triple curse setup going. Maybe let's just do Sniper's Mark. So 11 million up to 22.4. Crazy. And that all comes from 1 ring, which we'll talk about here shortly. In our helmet here, we're going to have Flame Dash, Second Wind, which you can do Second Wind, or you can do maybe, I don't know if you can do Momentum. That's the new skill. Maybe try it out, maybe don't, I don't know. But Flame Dash, Second Wind, or Momentum. And then we have Hatred, Eternal Blessing, or you can do Zealotry, Eternal Blessing. It's almost literally the same damage. So I would pick one of those. I would put this in your helmet because of the green, green, red, blue. Makes it a little bit easier to do on this Heat Shiver, which again, we'll talk about here shortly. We also have in our boots here the fantastic Cast on Death portal setup. I actually like this a lot. Like I said, every once in a while, you're just going to get ahead of yourself. You're going to think that you're the king of Ray class. You're going to be flying through a map, and you literally flame dash ahead of yourself into a pack, and everybody just slaps you all at once, and you just die. And it's your own fault. But if you have a Cast on Death portal, you're back in it right then. So I like that. We also have a Summon Lightning Golem max 20 with a cast when damage taken max 20 as well. Again, we're just keeping it simple here, where I don't want to have to cast my Summon Golem every once in a while. I want it to automatically do it for me, so we're going to do that. And that's the gym setup. Like I said, pretty straightforward here. Moving on to our items. This is the juice here. This is where we're getting all the damages. Except for the fact that all of this gear is garbage. So I wanted to do that because, so basically what I do when I do these League Start guides is I typically set like a 10 chaos limit for each item, unless it's like a specific item that we need for the build, right? So for these weapons, these are like 10 chaos and under weapons, no problem. You could get these so easy. And I give you 2 different examples of what you could use. Some of the most important modifiers that we need are cast speed, critical strike multiplier, and also if you could get one like with that, with the +1 level all cold spell skill gems, that's pretty good as well. And on top of that, maybe the 4th best one you could get is like the added cold damage to spells, and of course just spell damage in general. But that, yeah, definitely most important is cast speed, multi, and then +1 level all spell gems. And The second wand is like the other version that you could get, right? Like, so like a decent amount of critical strike multiplier, a decent amount of cast speed, and then maybe craft on some spell damage, and you're chilling. These are literally like 5 chaos wands. Our helmet is literally also a 5 chaos item, probably even 5 chaos for like a max rolled one. I bet this one right here would cost like 3 chaos, and it is so much damage. It's crazy that this is so cheap and you get so much damage. So get this early on. I would literally get this like as you're leveling up, like the first I don't know, 3 chaos that you get could probably be one of these. Maybe you would want to get the soul mantle first and then the heat shiver second. So yeah, I would probably do that. Speaking of, soul mantle is key to the build. It is also like a 2-3 chaos item, which is fantastic for us. It actually gives us a free totem, which is really good early on because it gives us a level 20 spell totem, which means it's basically not going to die during the campaign. If you're able to snag one of these up early on, pretty solid. But yeah, these are super cheap. You can 5-link it yourself. I would suggest doing that, 5-linking it yourself. And that probably is going to cost you, I don't know, 50 chaos, 60 chaos max to 5-link it yourself if you're just kind of buying fusings. Now, if you want to 6-link this, I have a guide that I'll post in the video description for this on the easiest way to 6-link stuff. It's basically using the tainted currency and tainted fusing orbs. The average to do that on a 6-link to craft it yourself is between 2 and 3 divines. Keep that in mind. It's actually pretty cheap to get a 6-link these days, especially ours, because it is so common. There's going to be so many soul mantles out there that it's going to be very cheap to do. You could even, and I probably shouldn't even say this, it's more for like the in-game guide, but typically what you would want to do is find a good soul mantle with a good implicit on it, like +2 to duration gems or +2 to projectile gems, you know, stuff like that, and then do the 6-link method because it's so much cheaper to do than just buying a 6-link with already, you know, +2 to projectile gems on there. That's crazy. We don't want to do that. You can craft it yourself for like 2 to 3 divines. But yeah, I'll talk about that in the in-game version of the build. For now, just buy one of these for like a couple chaos, 5-link it yourself, and you're rolling. In the footage y'all saw earlier, I killed all those bosses with a 5-link, specifically on this. So you're totally fine if you just have a 5-link, no problem. For your gloves, you do want some gloves like this. Try and get as much dex as you can on them, but it's I would definitely value that over like a better roll. So the most important thing here is that increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. That's just basically like an increased damage because everything's chilled all the time. It goes from 30 to 50 as the roll. As you get closer to 50, it gets more expensive for sure. So I would value the dexterity over getting like a 50% roll, for example, right? Try and get as much resistances on this as possible. You'll notice that I'm going to say that a lot when I'm talking about a lot of this gear. Get as much resistances as possible. And the reason we're doing that is because we do eventually transition out of these wands into an annihilating light, which makes it incredibly difficult to gear your resistances. So you need a ton of resistances. So we're basically just prepping for that by getting as much resistances as possible. Moving on to our boots, super simple pair of boots here. You're just getting move speed and as much resistances as possible with some life and some mana. I guess I'll go back to the gloves real quick because this is obviously super important, is the implicits there. We want 15% chance to unnerve enemies for 4 seconds on hit, and we also want inflict cold exposure, applying 15% cold resistance. Now, these are the lesser forms of those currencies. You don't have to do anything crazy. You can literally use the lesser forms for like a chaos each, spam it until you get that. And it adds a ton of extra damage. Okay, cool. Moving on to the boots. Same thing here with the implicits. We do want probably 6% movement speed, and if you can get something like chance to avoid elemental amulets is pretty good. Maybe chance to avoid being shocked is also pretty good. For our amulet, you literally just want as much resistances as possible. Preferably you're going to want to get one with an open prefix so you can cast projectile speed and projectile damage. Projectile speed is actually really solid on this build. It helps you get to that second form of Ice Spear faster and thus get more damage. Definitely try and do this on a Kitrine amulet for that strength and dexterity. And then we want to anoint Mark of the Prey, which is a super cheap anoint. I'll go down here and show you what that is. Mark of the Prey right here. So marked enemies take 10% increased damage. So basically it's just a 10% more multiplier, and it only is a sepia, indigo, and crimson. So super cheap. Moving back to our items here. Yep, that was the amulet. Again, that's like a 10 chaos item, 10 chaos, 10k. This one might be like 10 to 20, I would say, probably to get a decent pair of gloves. The ring here, a Kikuzaru, is literally 1 chaos for this. Now you do want to put on the imbued catalysts as much as you can. And I'm not sure how much imbued catalysts are in the first like week of the league, but they can't be more than like 1 chaos each or something like that, right? So yeah, get a Kikuzaru, put on imbued catalyst, and that basically increases the caster modifiers, which means, if you can see right now, it says 70% increased effect curses on you. It actually starts at 60, but we're going up to 72 by putting on that caster modifier there. And by doing that and having the Soul of Yugal Pantheon, which is, let me get to it, Soul of Yugal, which is right here, says if you capture the Varhesh Shimmering Aberration, you get 30% reduced effective curses on you. So that plus the 70% from Kikuzaru means that you are basically immune to curses. And if you are immune to curses, then your Soul Mantle doesn't hurt you, right? So the reason we do that is because this inflicts a random hex on you when your totems die. So that's why we have to have 100% reduction of curse effectiveness on you. Yeah, cool. Moving on. Now this is where all of our damage comes from. Last league, these ranged in price from like, it kind of was all over the place, like 10C upwards of 60 chaos, and then I released my video and then it was like a divine, but then it shot back down to 60 chaos, so it's kind of all over the place. Hopefully you could pick one up early and it's only going to be maybe 20-30 chaos, no problem, but it gives so much damage. If you guys can remember, we went from 8 million to 22 million. That's how much damage the Anathema Ring gives, and here's what it does. Your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. Now we have 4 maximum power charges because of Conviction of Power on Hierophant, and they're always up as well. So yeah, we have 4 maximum curses, which is why we are actually able to quad curse, but in this version of the build, we're actually only triple cursing. Do keep that in mind. Once you get to the in-game version of the build, we're going to be quad cursing once you get Annihilating Staff, which you can 6-link, and you put it in there, but more on that to come. Okay, moving on to our belt, same thing here, a ton of life and a ton of resistances. Get as much resistances as you can. For Abyssal Jewels, it literally say that life and resistances. For our socket here, so here's the type of jewels that you're going to want to get. This is an example of a couple different things that you want on here. You can maybe get like a spell damage, cold damage, critical strike multiplier with cold skills, critical strike multiplier with elemental skills, just regular critical strike multiplier, and then also try and get a resistance on there. Again, we're trying to get as much resistance on there so that we can then use Annihilating Light, and I'll show you here in a second how much damage that increases it to once we're able to equip that Annihilating Light, but it takes so much resistances in order to get there. So for your large cluster, this is a cheap large cluster. We're going to try and roll it with Disorienting Display and Prismatic Heart. That's an 8 passive. Super easy, super cheap, and it's decent damage. It also comes with some resistances on there as well, which is pretty nice. For your first medium cluster, you have Eye to Eye and Repeater. So Eye to Eye is just a ton of extra damage with projectiles. Repeater is projectile damage and also cast speed. Remember, cast speed is crazy for us, so that's a really big damage cluster right there. If you can get a double multiplier, definitely do that. Like I think I got this one, I got one similar like this when I league started this. You can get them cheap, you can snipe them for like 5-10 chaos, no problem. They're pretty good. Now here's your second medium cluster. We have Ancestral Echo and Sleepless Sentries. Ancestral Echoes gives totem placement speed and also cast speed if you summon a totem recently. We love that cast speed. Sleepless Sentries, totem duration, and also Onslaught if you summon a totem recently, which is again more cast speed and move speed, so really good. And then here's just some more Cobalt Jewels. We have lots of jewel sockets in this build, so pretty good. Yeah, so that's all that. Let's go over the flask here. We have a Quicksilver flask, which is kind of up to you. You can actually kind of do whatever you want with this flask slot, but I did Quicksilver. The quartz flask here, basically what you want to do is you want one of your flasks to have a max rolled cast speed on it, and then you want it to be used when charges are full. Cast speed is so much damage for us, so getting like a tier 1 cast speed roll on one of your flasks and having it up all of the time is just a ton of extra damage. Now this is probably the second most expensive item in your build. It's probably more expensive, I would say, than even a 5-link Soul Mantle, but obviously not as expensive as a 6-link Soul Mantle, so probably the second most expensive. I looked at POB or POE.ninja, and usually on day 1 this is like 120 chaos, but literally on day 3 it jumps way down to like 50-60 chaos, and then after the first week it's like 20 to 30 chaos. So it depends on when you're playing in the league, but it's very affordable and it gives you so much damage. Let's look at this. It goes from 22 down to 15. That's crazy. So when this is up, you have massive damage, and here's why. It gives you 2 additional projectiles during flask use. We're also going to enchant it with increased effect. Now, because we're getting that increased effect, we're actually going to make that 2 projectiles up to 3 projectiles, and extra projectiles does so much damage in this build. So incredibly strong damage flask. Lavianga's Spirit is really good for mana use. Basically, you're going to spam a bunch of totems, and then you're going to hit Lavianga's, and it's going to fill all your mana up. And then at that point, it's also going to be free to cast stuff while it is filling up that mana. So it's just really helpful for your mana. I would definitely get this early on. It's literally like a 1 chaos item. Now you're also going to want to get a life flask with bleed removal. I would do something like this, or you could get one that has increased life, so maybe like 4,000 life over X amount of seconds, and then immunity to blood, corrupting blood. So yeah, that is the gear. Now, like I said, a sneak peek into the next level of the build is then getting an Annihilating Light Staff. To have mega damage, you just have to have mega resistances in order to do that. Let's look and see what that does. Are you guys even ready for this? 22 up to 41 million DPS. Super crazy. I think I would probably even do it with this amount of gear, like 75 fire, 67 cold. That sounds really scary, right? But I don't know, 41 million DPS on like a 2 divine budget. That's just crazy. That is so crazy, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it. We got cast on Death Portal, don't we? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Okay, cool. So let's click this back in there. We'll save this, and that is all of the gear. So let's go ahead and move on over to our calculations, just kind of show you guys some stuff so you'll understand that it's not any shenanigans going on here. Custom modifiers, I did put this in because, like I said, the changes to Hierophant have not happened in the POB yet. Like, it's not updated. Once it does get updated, I will remove this. Okay, so don't fear. We do have curses active. We get more damage while we have curses active because we actually do want a I took this away on accident. Self-flagellation. Yes. Oh my goodness gracious, boys, we actually just increased our damage to almost 26 million. I'm undercutting my own build. So yeah, so we actually do want self-flagellation as well. Basically what this does is 20% increased damage per curse on you. We're able to get 9 curses on us because of Soul Mantle. So typically, for example, when you fight a boss, you actually want to precast all your totems to get all 9 of those curses, and then go into the boss, and then that's when you damage, and you'll have all the damages. Okay, going back to configuration, this is against a pinnacle boss as well. And yeah, and then I don't have anything else checkmarked here. I think we have unnerved checked, and that is coming from the gloves. Everything will always be unnerved because we're firing so much at a time. So yeah, no shenanigans in here. Let's go to the notes section to explain this to you guys. So what I've done here is I've gone act by act and shown you exactly what to buy from vendors, what to get as quest rewards, what your gem leaks are going to want to be at the end of each act. It's super helpful. If this is your first time playing this build, or even if, I use this myself because it just helps a ton. So you can do that, and it's all color coded and pretty, and it really should help. I do really think it should help you. So I would check this. And it goes all the way through Act 6, at which point from Act 6 to 10, it's the same thing. So just, yeah, use that at the same time. So I guess one thing to note, though, is we are doing Spark. We do Spark up until we get, I don't even know, probably up until maybe Maps. At that point, I would switch over to Freezing Pulse, and then Ice Spear once you maybe get a couple good ones. But until then, Spark is just really good. It's way better than Freezing Pulse. Like, you would not want to use Freezing Pulse leveling up. Do not, I repeat, do not use Freezing Pulse leveling up. It's poo-poo. You want to use Spark. But once you get into Maps, you can go ahead and switch over once you get a couple good items. And yeah, take a look at this if you want to do that. Okay, moving on from our path of building, let's take a look at the other tools that I want to give you guys. So this is all of the trade links for the build. I use an app extension that you can get on Chrome. You can get on what I have here, which is Opera GX. I think you can get it on Firefox as well. And it's called Better Trading, POE Better Trading, right? And I have a link for this in the description of the video. And basically it allows you to save gear sets and trade searches. Super, super cool. Like, so here's my Ice Spirit build, right? And the way I do this is I put it from the first item that you want to purchase all the way to like the last item that you want to purchase. So the first item you would want is a Soul Mantle. The second item that you want to buy is a Kikuzaru. Third, Heat Shiver. You get the idea, right? So how do you actually add this into your trade website, right? So you're going to do, this is how I do it, right? So I go to export and share and I click this and then I make a paste bin, which by the way, paste bin does not like these links for some reason. It will not work in paste bin. So I'm having to use some weird thing called haste bin. But it's the same thing. I did a bunch of Googling. It's totally safe. Have no fear, my friends. So yeah, just come over here and you want to click copy, and then you want to go back here, and then on your screen you want to go over to right here where it says import folder. You're going to click that, and then you're going to copy and paste that, or you're going to paste it in here and hit save. That's all you got to do. It's super, super easy. It comes up here, and that's all your searches. So that is the trade links. Let's go ahead and show you guys kind of some of the things I've done for the custom leveling loot filter. One of the things that is important, let me show you. We'll go down to jewels here. So we're going to pick up as many crimson jewels as we can. Now the reason you want to do this is you want to Val Orb every single one that you get. It's apparently 1 in 300 to get a Rain of Splinters. Rain of Splinters last league were so expensive. They were like 10 to 15 divines. Now it is incredibly strong for a build. As you could see, I did not put that in our league start build because it's so expensive. But that is in our in-game build, and it gives you +2 projectiles, which is so much extra damage. So yeah, I would pick up every single cobalt, or every single crimson jewel along the way. And when you get those crimson jewels, you want to Val Orb them and hope that you get Rain of Splinters. Yeah, and then I just did some stuff with our colors and links, right? So if you see an item that's got a red little star on it or a blue star, basically what that means is that is our colors that you want. Pick it up. It's the red, red, blue, green. That's going to be your main links. Same thing with the blue one. Like that's another 4 link that you would use: blue, blue, red, green. So basically it's just making it as easy as possible for you guys to just kind of cruise through the campaign and not use your brain, which is something that I like to do, not use my brain. Yeah. I think the other thing that I did here was, yeah, so I did change it to where it is highlighting spiraled wands. In this patch, it has changed to you're not being able to use the crafting recipe to make nice wands early on, which is poo-poo. But spiraled wands now have added lightning damage to spells as the implicit instead of spell damage. So you do want to probably try and get a spiraled wand, which you can start getting at level 24. And you want to craft on the crafting bench. After you defeat Piety, you'll get added flat damage as a crafting option. So you want to find a spiraled wand, and then you want to go to your crafting bench and you want to chunk on, you know, added flat lightning damage to spells, and it'll be a pretty good wand that'll literally get you through the end of the campaign if you get 2 of those wands. Yeah, cool. So that's it, guys. That is probably everything that you need to know in order to play and have fun with Ice Spirit Totems. If you guys do choose to use this build, let me know in the comment section. I would love to hear how it's going. I am going to be playing this build as my league starter. If you're interested in seeing how it goes for me and getting any tips or anything like that, I will be streaming the entire opening weekend from Friday to Monday on Twitch. That is linked in the description below. I'm also going to be doing update videos. I usually do like a day 2 update, day 3 update, and then I'll do an in-game guide, so that'll absolutely be coming. And then I even do usually like a min-max guide, which is how you get that 700+ million DPS, right? So lots of content to come. Pretty excited for this league. I hope you guys are too, and I hope this guide helps out. If it does, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.